crystals, before, through and beyond. That's quite a field we're going to cover. It is not a blanket explanation of crystals. And I'm afraid that's what we've been doing in recent years. We kind of treat the crystal as something that does something, but we don't know what it does for sure. We seem to feel that it has healing powers, it has powers of communication. It seems to have all kinds of things, but what? And how will you know until you know exactly what a crystal is? A crystal is a living thing. It's not just a piece of quartz. We have some crystals here now that I'll be talking about later on, and they're beautiful. But what good are they? I'm sure that a lot of you have used them for many things, maybe your arthritis or something, but did you know what you're doing? We have to take a look at what tools we're using, where we're using them, do we use them separately or in conjunction with each other. We have to know exactly what we are using before we can do anything sensible with them. If you try to do experiments as I have done, when you don't really know what you're doing, you might have some success here and do the same thing again, but each time it comes out a bit different. That's because you haven't put things in balance. That's because you don't really know what tools you're using. And unless we know, we'll never get anything stable. Now, before the crystal was formed, something else had to happen. We have to go back through time to the beginning of creation. I don't intend to talk to you a bit about the middle life of the crystals or future of the crystals. I'm going to talk to you from the time they were first formed till the time when we will be able to use them sensibly. And so to begin, the first thing that happened was, God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Now, when God made light, he did it in a scientific way. I suppose the first light he made was his own energy. But he provided this universe with an energy that keeps it running, keeps it going all the time, and that energy is part and parcel of everything. So when he created light, he created it with something. That something was magnetism. Now, I want you to think on, all through my talk with you, of all things being of one substance. They are all magnetism in a different form. If you can accept that and go along with me, you're going to find it a lot easier to understand me. Doesn't matter what it is, just say to yourself, okay, I know what he's talking about. Everything is the same medium. It is all the same energy in a new form. And light was magnetism spun until it shone and became light. Now, the crystals we're going to be talking about, they came from light too. And a lot of the things I'm going to be discussing until we get to those crystals may leave you to understand that I forgot what I was talking about. We are talking about crystals right from the beginning. And the light itself, being magnetism, was in itself the beginning and the end. You've often heard people say from dust to dust. That's a true saying, but we can go a little bit farther than that. We can go from the beginning of light, from magnetism, right through to the end In other words, in simple words, like from alpha to omega, the full cycle. From dust to dust, energy, light, and everything else is made, and back to the same thing again, back to the energy. And if you think of light in the sense that it's not just something to lighten the day with, but a material to make things with, I'm going to show you how it does actually create other things. And during that time that I'm talking about, I want you to realize that we moved from one thing to another in different amounts of light, and they became different things. But first of all, we have energy in the form of light. And when I mention light from here on in, whether I say magnetism or light, I'm talking about the same thing. Light is just a little farther forward than magnetism. Now if you look at this chart up here, chart A, here's the sun, and here are some of the planets. Now the sun is like nuclear energy, and it emanates energy out through into the universe. Now the energy radiating from the sun is positive. Any energy that radiates is positive. The energy from the sun radiates towards, we'll say, Venus. You see this little curl here? That's a conical shaped spiral, and it's going counterclockwise. Now that does something. It takes this positive energy from the sun and turns it counterclockwise so that it gravitates into the North Pole of each planet and makes it negative energy. So you have energy, positive, gravitating into that tiny spot of the North Pole, and it becomes negative energy. Now, it continues through the Earth itself, spiraling down through the center of the Earth until it reaches about the equator. And then it starts to open its spiral up again like this one, and it's going the other way around now. It's going clockwise. In other words, it was gravitating counterclockwise, still gravitating here till it reaches halfway, and then it is still turning just the same, but now it's throwing it away again. It is now radiating. What's happening is energy from the sun goes out to feed the planet, and the planet passes it through and feeds it back to the sun. They regenerate each other. Now, you might think that is hard to understand, how this energy going counterclockwise comes out of here clockwise. Now, if I had a bicycle and I stood on its handlebars and its saddle, broadside onto you, and I turned the wheel clockwise, and then I walked around the other side of the bicycle and I had a look which way it was going, it is now going counterclockwise. It's going the same way. So that if you were in the northern hemisphere, see the water go down your drain and it's going counterclockwise, if you could stand on your head and see it from the same position as those in the southern hemisphere, it's going clockwise. It did not change its spiral, it just gravitated into small amount and spread out again to go to a large amount. Where it came from, it went back to. You could call that perpetual motion if you like. The rivers, I should say, have been running into the seas from the beginning of time, yet the seas are not full. We have a system going on which God created whereby a wave of energy gravitating does not finish its gravitation until the wave of radiation begins. In other words, you've got a wave where this would be just finishing here, and this one starts before it gets to it. In other words, one wave starts before the other finishes. There's a reason for that. If something is gravitating, before it gets to the end of its gravitation, and the radiation starts, you have something like that. One starting before they're quite finished. And because of that little gap in between the two, there's no gap really, but that sort of hesitation, then you have continuum. You see how clever God was. He made everything to keep going forever and ever. And that wave break there means to say that this system will go on all the time. Now you might say if you're gravitating something and you're radiating it at the same speed, which will always happen. Gravitation and radiation always the same speed. But one started just after the other, or just before the other one finished. And so it leaves you with what you formed by gravitation, and it has not dissipated because the radiation didn't start till after that was formed. So we have a continuum there. A lot has been said about this energy over the years. You see the scientists talking about quantum physics. And they say that the energy that comes from the sun does not come in a steady flow, always the same. They say it comes in bursts or amounts, quantum amount. Well, they're right in both cases. First of all, the sun sends out its energy and keeps it going, we'll say, evenly all the time, both out and back, and it's non-stop. But energy over, say, a year, 12-month period, could drop a little in strength, sort of a battery going down a little bit. And not very much, I'm talking about very fine amounts, but the energy of the universe or the energy of the earth could drop just slightly. And so it was necessary for something else to be thrown in. And that was a little flush of it at a certain time in the year, once a year, not every week or every 2 months or more, once a year there would be that extra flush of energy to pick it up back into balance again. Otherwise, we would find ourselves going out of our orbit. Things would get worse all the time. So there is that rejuvenation once a year whereby there is a certain amount of energy comes through. So those people who said this energy is not continuous, they were wrong. And those who said that it was quantum energy where it came in bursts were right, but in a second sense. It was only when it was made up. I suppose that a lot of you have heard when a farmer, around August time, his crops ripen in a couple of days. They're near to it, but all of a sudden they ripen very quickly. And they didn't really know the reason why. Some will say, oh, summer lightning. Well, if you lived in China, you would find that every 7th day of the 7th month on the Chinese calendar, this is what happens. This energy is, the quantum energy is released, and it does balance the Earth's magnetic field again. And the Chinese used to collect, and still do, collect the water from their rivers and streams, and they would save that water to preserve all kinds of fruits and vegetables. They still do it today. We were right when we said the energy continuous all the time, and also there's that little burst to make it up as well. When you get energy spinning, it usually spins in what we call waves, light waves. And a light wave really is the beginning of all matter. The energy itself spins counterclockwise, and it has it's like a a coil where the center is just small like a spring in a watch. And the center turning is very slow compared with the outer rings of the end of the coil. And light is on, let's say I had a coil here, flat coil, and I stretched it up like a cone so that the tip of it is just that bit and it's gravitating to make something. Well, on those lines, it picks up energy. The light is spinning itself, and at various intervals down that light wave, because of the speed it's going, so it compacts itself, gravitates into what we call matter. Now, if I wanted to dig a hole in the garden, I would take the earth away and put it on the side, but I got a heap. The heap came out of the hole. The bigger the heap, the bigger the hole. And when light in the universe spins to create what we call elements, what is happening is that the light spinning is pulling the space content towards itself, compacting it, and it's what you call stretching space. It wants it, so it pulls it all to itself and compacts itself, gravitates. And so matter is really energy stretching space. A light wave would be getting bigger like that. And down through the center, there's a line. You might be saying to yourself, what's this got to do with crystals? It's got everything to do with crystals. So up here, we've got our first, it's spinning very slowly there, and alpha non is the first one there, just to mention one. But as we come down here, we got hydrogen and we got iron and whatnot. Because the spin is greater here, like on a bicycle wheel. If you spin a bicycle wheel once more, then the hub is traveling much slower than the rim itself. So where they come on the outside here, they're going much faster, and these are getting bigger. And so you have a wider sweep, so that these are traveling at such a rate, you get your elements form on the light itself, and they're getting heavier. Now, when I say heavier, I mean when we compare one atom of this as compared to another one. We don't say, oh, there's this bulk here. We don't compare bulk, we just go by how it gravitates. Now, the energy we're using is light. And the light compacts itself into these things, and you'll have what you call an octave. The octave will stretch from here, I beg your pardon, it stretched from halfway here to halfway here. And on one octave, just on music, there's eight elements, which you don't count the 8 elements from one here, you take half. That's half here, and 1, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5, 6.5, and the other half of this one gives you your 8. You start with half here again. This is how your elements are formed. And they will have different weights because of the position they are on the scale of light. This light here forms matter because it is gravitating. And at the same time it's gravitating, inside that spiral there's one going the other way, which is radiating. But it's behind. Remember I told you it was behind time with the other one. And so the elements that you had formed, they remain there. Now, one little thing that I might mention as just a point of interest is that mass rotates at a certain speed, like the Earth. The Earth rotates at about 19 miles a second. And the speed of light is 186,000 miles a second. Now, the difference between the time of them moving would indicate that there is time, such a thing as time. I will mention this, and I will repeat, it only indicates that there is time. Now, any element itself, or any light wave, must remain in balance. You cannot have more gravitation than radiation. You have to have them both equal. And when you have those elements formed, we find them in the Earth itself. When the Earth was being created, they have cooled down. You got your elements in the Earth. But this is how they were created in the first place. This is how mass was created. Now, when you think of mass, don't ever think of something big. Think of even a speck of sand is mass, or matter, call it what you like. Now, any part of matter that you see, think on continuously that matter is light in another form. If you can accept that, we'll get somewhere. Now, once we have, one of the things I should point out here before we go too much farther is that in creation there has to be rules. God made rules which I guess we call the laws of nature. And one of the things that would indicate this to you is a very simple test you can do for yourself. We have a chart here. This one would be chart, but have a look at this up here. To indicate the rules of nature. That is like a chart of a pebble dropped in some water. And the pebble drops in here and it starts to send rings out. Now, I don't suppose anybody ever bothered to check it, but if you take a photograph of those rings on the water, leave about 10 rings spread out, and photograph it, you've got something you can work on, like a chart. And if you measure the circumference of this one here and multiply it by the cube root of pi, then this is the circumference of this one. If you take the circumference of this one and multiply it by the cube root of pi, it is the same measurement as this one. So it's increasing, all these rings are increasing one by one by the cube root of pi. And never alter that. That's the laws of nature. Now, a funny thing happened too, that if you take the circumference, or rather the diameter, of the fifth ring, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take the diameter of this fifth ring across here, it will be the circumference of the first one, the same measurement. So if you took the second ring, this sixth ring would have the same diameter as the circumference of the first one. So every 1 to 5, the diameter is the same as the circumference of the previous one, the small one. So you see, even they travel out, they expand. It's not accidental. It never is two different ways. It's always the same. The expansion of those rings on the water are no different to your radio waves. You see the radio waves coming out of the tower, they expand exactly the same. They multiply by the cube root of pi, a law of nature. You never alter that. And you'll find that in so many things, shape plays a part. There's all kinds of things that are natural, We don't have to do anything. Shape plays a part. If everything were in balance, then nothing would move. So we have to have something that creates an imbalance so that nature can use its laws of nature and come back into balance. So if it goes out of balance and comes back into balance, we have movement. Now anything out of balance, there is something wrong. There's something needs correcting. That's why nature puts it back into balance again. But shape is one of the things that will influence movement. For instance, if I had a cup of soapy water and I get a straw and I dip it into the soapy water and I take it out and there's water on the end of it and I just go like that, it drops plop on the floor. If I dip it in again and blow into the water, I get myself a nice big bubble and I can just shake it up and it'll float away. The water, amount and content are exactly the same. The only difference was the shape. Now, shape that's quite a broad word, shape. Pick any shape you like and every other shape is in it. There is no shape in this world that is by itself. They all contain each other's shape. For instance, up here, you see this chart, see here? This one here. I got a circle, I got a hexagon, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 circles and one in the center. Now this is the only perfect way that circles will fit close together and leave no gaps. Now in that circle I can have a hexagon, I can have a triangle, all the shapes are within the shapes. Now I want to point something out here that you probably haven't thought of. You remember I said to you early on that from alpha to omega, that dust to dust, okay. In the light spectrum, colours of the rainbow if you like, we have 6 colours. And one in the centre. The one in the centre is pure light. What happens is that if you spin light, or rather light as it is, contains the colours, and only when you slow it down or reflect it in some way will you get the colours out of it. But when I was a kid, we used to play whip and top. I don't know whether you know that, well that is. In England it was a whip and top and you hit it with a string and it used to spin around, and we used to paint the top of it, different coloured stripes, pretty colours. And when that was spinning fast, it looked white. When it was still, it was different colours. And it's the same when light spins. It becomes pure light. All these join together into the one. Now, if you were to take anything like that, you bring it back down to the one. All these 6, they come back down to the one. Now let's take the speed of light. If you were to find the square root of the speed of light, about 24 times, you come down to the 1. We always go back. We come from the 1 and we go back to the 1. Now all these performances that I'm talking about are going to be reflected in your pyramids. And one by one we'll put them into use. But to carry on with the the matter that's locked in form, light is locked in form, we have energy entering the earth and it's distributed. Like you can take electricity into a building, the main one comes in, and then you distribute your electricity to the various rooms, the outlets, the whatever, stoves and whatever, lighting, and it's distributed over the place. Now the earth is the same thing. the Earth has a grid, which is this one here, chart F. This is like a grid of the Earth. All those shapes I talked to you about are in that. You have your circle is your circle of the Earth. You have hexagons, and you have triangles, and then they are laced together. You see, you can come down to a smaller hexagon here, if you can see that. You come down to a smaller hexagon, and you come down to a smaller triangle. In other words, from a big one up here, you can go down to a small one here. It's just a repeat of the same thing down. And what happens as you take from the big area and compact it into the center, gravitation, then you have a stronger energy in the center than you have on the outside. You'll never get much strength in a large nucleus like you will a small one. If you have gravitation, tremendous gravitation, into a small compact nucleus, it will give out, it has more potential than the one that's sloppy. So that on your light wave there, the ones that were turning slowly, they weren't compacted enough, and so you got light elements like hydrogen. And the ones that are lower down on the larger scale of that light scale, where they're whizzing around, you have such things as iron and copper. They have gravitated to the center until they are more solid, if you like. And the more solid they are, the more energy they have. Around the nucleus of an atom, you will find the nucleus in the center, and around it, maybe I could show you on the board here. Around the nucleus, you would have, there's your energy. Around that, you would have what you call a force field. And around that force field, let's say that's your force field, around that you would have magnetic field, which is in circles, isn't it? Goes in waves. Now, when you measure the energy of of any atom or any mass, you do not measure this from here out to here. You don't measure it even from here to the edge of the force field. You take a measurement of the edge of the nucleus to the edge of the force field. The radius of that will give you the approximate strength of your force field. If this is narrow here, you haven't got much of a force field. If this is compacted so tight, your force field could be out here. You'll see a lot of people who have a lot of energy. They are usually pretty good people, and they seem to always have plenty of energy. And if you are a person that could see an aura, you would see a wider aura around that person because they have that energy there. Some people that are kind of sloppy and don't sit around all day, you wouldn't see much of that. But a person that's active, on the go, lots of work in them, you'll see that aura around them. So the more compact the guts of the thing, the stronger the energy it is. We'll be talking about that in these crystals in a minute. Now, in this grid of the Earth, you'll notice there are two triangles. And this is a little bit deceiving because this line actually travels through here. But on this triangle here, this line should not travel through. This one here should be on the top of this one here. And this line here should stop there and start again there, like that. So this one is on the top of the other, which indicates that the two triangles there are not touching. Now, whether they are an eighth of an inch apart, you can put your finger between them, that's nothing to do with it. They could be 8,000 miles apart. And so we have a situation like this. I made a cutout here so that you could see the Earth's grid. The Earth's grid is something like all this work here. All these lines, these are hot spots here. But I took the trouble to cut this out to show you how the Earth itself, which is an icosahedron, that's 20 triangles covering the Earth, on those, like those triangles there. And if you saw the Earth like that, and then you took another one and took it over the poles, let's take this one here. Say you took this one and wrapped it up over the top of the pole to the other side. If you could see through the Earth, it would look like that. Okay? What do we have there? We have the Star of David. I have asked rabbis, priests, all kinds of religious people to try to find out for me what the Star of David is for. The usual answer is, well, it was the insignia, if you like to call it, or the logo on King David's banner. That's not good enough for me. This very grid here indicates that the Star of David, we'll talk more about it as I get into the crystals, this indicates very strongly that this one influences the other side of the Earth, and we have a working mechanism whereby one plate on this side of the Earth is working with the other. The sign of David is the sign of all energy. But these triangles here are not just flat, they're three-dimensional. Like this little one I have here. There's a triangle that you see. Now that fits like that into the Earth itself. 20 of them all fit to make what you call an icosahedron. Something like that, okay? Not going to deal too much on that. But they all face into the center of the Earth. Now from the outside we see the energy gravitating, it's big on the outside, gravitating into the center in this fashion. You see the coil, there's the coil there, and it's gravitating to the center. But it doesn't stay there. Then it repeats and goes out the other way to radiate away again. When this goes into the center of the Earth, it is facing another one opposite it. The points come together. And so you have this going on here, that going on there, and you create a situation like a bar magnet where the center of the bar magnet is neutral. This is positive maybe, this is negative, and they come together, but they don't touch. They go to the outside, they keep in and out, but they do not touch. Now, I'm going to come back one moment to the light wave here to indicate to you and give you some kind of proof that everything is of the same energy. If light puts things together, then we could take them apart. And this is the one way I did it. I put a little experiment together, and this is what I did. I drew a triangle on a table. Then I got three little tetrahedrons, which were coat hanger wire, and they stood one here like that. Here's your tetrahedron here. That's a bad show there, but there's one stood here and one stood here, and here's the point of them. They're looking at each other. Let's put on a plane. There's one standing here, and there's one standing here, and there's one standing here. Okay? Now, of these three tetrahedrons, they're only about 9 inches high. And they're only made of wire. But the shape that I was talking about has an influence on it. The shape of those tetrahedrons created a movement inside let's call it a pyramid. And the movement itself started to cooperate with the other two. This one's talking to that one and that one. Now, I put a little wooden arm here. I'll draw it sideways. It's like a lamp post, a wooden arm, and this arm stuck out. And on the end of here, I hung a piece of string with a small piece of zinc, pure zinc, about 2 inches long, 1.5 inches wide, and 1/16 of an inch thick. And I hung it here, like that. It's over here, stood here, and it's hung down there. Here's your zinc. So between this pyramid here and this one here, they are talking to each other, if you like. That's in simple terms. What is happening is that they send electrons to each other. You probably heard about Tesla's energy through the ether. These do it naturally. Now, the energy that was being collected into here, I'll describe exactly how it happens in a minute. That these three pyramids are talking to each other. In other words, this one's sending energy to, it can't go to there, it goes to the nearest thing that attracts it. So the energy is shooting from here to there, and there to there, and there to there. Now, anybody will tell you that zinc is a pure metal. It's not made of 2 or 3 different items. It's just pure metal. Well, I beg to differ, because after about 3 weeks of this bombardment going on, these were sending out electrons towards each other and hitting the zinc. Now, zinc is held together in proton form. That's way beyond the electron. Now, if you hit zinc, or I'll deal with zinc, that's one I use. If an electron hits the zinc, electron can't come out. It wants in. The only thing it can kick out is a proton. So all these three were bombarding these electrons, and eventually, like it's kicking protons out, eventually the whole thing collapsed onto a little pile of powder here. A little pile of powder. And when I had that powder examined, it was a dirty calcium. Now, if you know the weights of your elements, you'll know that off the top of my head it's 65 point something, and I've got them here somewhere. There's about 25 moles per gram difference in the weights. 40 point something, I think it's 40.8, I'm not sure, doesn't matter. There's about 25 moles per gram, that's molecules per gram in weight, at atomic weight. So if you took the same amount of each, this would weigh one, that would weigh that, and one would weigh that, because this one here, your calcium, was found higher up that scale on the lighter side than the zinc. That was farther down here. It was heavier. Now, when I saw the difference that I had in weights, I tried to find something in the periodic tables that had that weight. But what had I removed? All I know was that my zinc had collapsed, and I had it tested, and it was calcium. I tried to find a number that would equal that, and not even a combination of different numbers would give me that answer. So I had to look for something else. And it was obvious to me really before I started, but I just wanted to be sure that what I had removed was energy. I hadn't removed anything you can give a name to, I had removed energy. So I put this in a little tiny bag hung it on here, and I repeated the process. And believe it or not, after about 6 weeks, it's longer this time, it got smaller and smaller, and it changed colour too, and all I had when I tested it was aluminum. I'd come from zinc to calcium to aluminum. And there's a funny side of this, because a doctor will say that you don't have enough calcium in your system. I'll give you some calcium tablets. At the same time, somebody says, don't cook in aluminum pans, it's bad for you. But when you get calcium tablets, there's aluminum in it, isn't there? Energy-wise. Not only that, they say, okay, get out of the aluminum and get out of the calcium, I'll give you some zinc tablets. They gave you all three. Because in energy form, like I told you when we first started, we must regard everything in its electrical magnetic form. Else you're not going to understand me. Reduce everything in your mind to the electrical and the magnetic. And I will give you numbers. You can work these out for yourself. If that's the weight of an electron, you can prove it if you've got a calculator there. I know for a fact that hydrogen is 770 electrons. That's hydrogen, 1 point something. So if you take this number here and divide it into any one of your elements on the periodic tables, you can find their electronic magnetic content. Now in a few minutes we're going to turn to something else that it's a continuation of this, but I'm going to take you inside a crystal. I suppose if you wanted to buy a house, you'd want to look through it. And so if you want to be able to use a crystal, would it not be sensible to have a look what it's like inside and what we can do? We move around in it and find what spots do what. Now I'm going to take you to this chart over here, chart E, and I've drawn it in the shape of a triangle, because the molecules of your quartz crystal are pyramid shape, right down to the tiniest little molecules of your crystal. They are pyramid shape. So now the one that I've just taken now, I've enlarged it, and I'm going to take you inside to see what it's like. Now just imagine yourself now looking around your new home. First of all, this pyramid here would be no different to your big crystal pyramid. It's a series of these put together in a big one. Now, if you want to find the areas that are most useful to you, the functional areas, then there are certain things you have to do and abide by. First of all, I'll show you how to find the three magnitudes of a pyramid. When I say magnitudes, I mean if you in the house, the heat at the ground level, floor level, will be different to halfway up, and it'll be different again in the ceiling. We're not talking about heat, but energy rises and does practically the same thing. So now, what we're looking at is really this size of this base here. If it's squashed up into there, whatever's in here, it has to get into a smaller place and become stronger. Now, to find the three magnitudes, or three divisions, never mind the intermediate bits in between, the three main ones. First of all, you measure the side of, if you could draw this on paper for yourselves, you draw the length of your pyramid, measure it, and you find the center mark here. And you do the same here and find the center mark. Then with a square, put it on the side here and draw a line in. Compass, if it's like, and one in there. And where they touch, that you draw a line across parallel with the base, and you have the basic energy up to the first dimension, or first magnitude. It is multiplied there by 10. Whatever you had in here, 150 Gauss I suggest is here, 150 Gauss at ground level. By the time it reaches here, it is 1500. And where by the time it goes farther up to the top, it becomes 15,000. But now we only have one dimension yet, or one magnitude. The second magnitude is found by measuring from here to here, the center mark of it, halfway between the two, and draw a line across. Now you have dimension 1, dimension 2, or magnitude 1, magnitude 2. And each of these multiplies by 10, so that whatever magnitude you draw into the pyramid, naturally, let's talk about naturally, not force-fed, whatever energy you draw into the pyramid would come out of the top 1,000 times stronger. Now, this point here, if I said to you, you've got a glass pyramid there, like one we have here, where is the center of that? Where is the cube root of it? Well, this is the way you find it. Half that measurement in here, and half of this there. This is the cube root of your pyramid. It's an unusual shape, isn't it? It isn't like a cube or even a sphere. That is the cube root of any pyramid. Doesn't matter whether it's equilateral sides or what. That will be the cube root. Now, what does that mean? The energy collects into it and condenses itself into a nucleus at that particular stage and builds up. That's the place where all your energy builds to. That's what it's going to be. Whatever you bring into here, it will congregate there. That's the cube root of your pyramid. Now, from here, halfway up, that's 2/3. That's 1/3, 2/3 up. You have the junction of the second and first dimensions. Here's your first one, here's your second one. This is the junction of them. Now, the energy from here will spiral up there to this area here. If it releases, it would carry on its way and go out. But at this stage, we're talking about magnitudes. This is the place where all your energy collects. This is your energy. This is your engine. This is your nucleus, the power. And that gradually spins and gets more dense into this area here. And this one I would call, I got a name for it. It's a place where a master of productivity. That's where it all comes together. That's your strength. And then you have up here the master of distribution. Now, when I say master, that means to say it is its own master. When you leave it like this, your crystal doing this, it is its own master. But later on, I'll show you how to take this crystal and use these points here to your advantage. I will show you how to put more into there, or take some away from here, or distribute it in any direction, and as much of that as I want. You will never ever empty that. You will never empty more than that rose to. You can't take any more than that. But as that empties, this fills. In other words, a cycle, you never lose the energy of that. So whatever goes into here and leaves from there, if it's allowed to go, which it will do, it takes a period of time for a crystal to fill. And from that time on, it has a time cycle. If this were, for instance, when I had my 30-foot pyramid, it took 5 days to fill. And it didn't take me long to discover these spots in there where I could do different things. It took 5 days to fill it, and took somewhere about 13 or 14 minutes for it to empty here. But it did it on its own. I had nothing to do with it. It filled in 5 days, then in the evening it was usually 13, 14 minutes, and it released. Now remember, I told you when the Earth received its energy into the North Pole, positive changed to gravitated to negative, and then went through and to the South Pole and threw it out as radiation. This here gravitates itself from this area here. I showed you the spirals that we're talking about on its way up. It gravitates from here to get this stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and eventually it will leave from there. But as soon as it leaves there, it is no longer gravitating, it is radiating. This would suggest to you that you would have to use the energy in a pyramid to receive a negative force. You could not receive a negative force after it is released. It has become radiation, which is positive. When you come to use your crystals and you try to use negative energy to calm a nervous system, to soothe something, you can't do it by the radiation coming from it, because it's positive, and that would make it worse. You see, we're gradually carving up the crystals until you know exactly what you're doing. Now, in using this, you would notice that on this little one here, I showed you the bottom of that, where the circles are on the bottom. Well, imagine this circling here. It does not reach the extremity of this base there. In every crystal, no matter what size it is, or pyramid if you like, there is that much there on the outside. It never reaches. In other words, the circles will touch that, getting smaller and smaller, but it never comes right to the edge until it gets to the junction of the first and second dimension. And then this is all full. It's touching all the way. Now, let me see. If you want to use these crystals for any particular purpose, you have to be able to set them up either singly or in combinations with each other. And if you were to set this one up with one underneath it here, or a crystal that was both ends the same, then you would have, tip it sideways. If you squeeze it in the center, energy will come out at the ends. Okay? So it's that way in the first place. Okay, you tip it sideways and energy comes outside at right angles to where you squeeze it. And if you take a small crystal, I've got one here that I can give you some idea. Let's try this one. If you took that small crystal, don't forget, it's live. There's energy moving there. It's matter just wrapped together and movement there. Now, if you took a piece of copper wire, fine copper wire, and you wrapped so many coils around it, leaving one end loose, and then wrapped it with some mica, and then wrapped the rest of the coil around it, and leave the two wires, one outside the mica and one inside the mica, now you have a little motor. And it won't work the motor as it is. If you put it in a vise or something to squeeze it at the center, then the two wires will make a little motor run. It's what you call piezoelectricity. Now, in the case of this, supposing I put that up into a pyramid or a bigger crystal, then this is feeding that more energy, and it's continuous. Now, as you squeeze this to make it work, energy comes out, and as you release it, it comes back in again. It goes, it'll breathe for you. You'll never squeeze it empty, but as you release the pressure, so it fills itself again immediately, reaches balance. It has to stay in balance. And so you have a little motor there. That's one thing you can use your crystal for.